when we talk about World War II. Okay, so now we're going to go back just a little bit in history, and we're going to talk about Kaiser Wilhelm. And I always make Kaiser Wilhelm, I think that hat of his is really cool. So he is week 2, card 2, and I definitely think you need one of those fun hats for Kaiser Wilhelm, because it makes you think that he's like a bull with one horn, and he's going to spare you. And Kaiser Wilhelm was the first grandchild of Queen Victoria, so definitely put up her name. And so she sent her best physician over to Germany when he was born, and the best physician kind of made a mistake, and so he had an arm that didn't work very well, and his leg did not work very well, and he was very self-conscious about that. And Kaiser Wilhelm saw his grandma, Queen Victoria, and he kind of was like, well, gosh, you know, Germany and Prussia, which he was the emperor of, they've never really had that much success as my grandma, Queen Victoria, so it's time for our time in the sun. So let's draw a picture of a sun on our timeline card. And so that was one of the things. Let's think back just a little second ago to nationalism and pridefulness. He was thinking he wanted Germany to conquer other countries so everyone could go, oh, Germany, Prussia, oh, like that. And he wanted his time in the sun, but that was going to cost hundreds of thousands of people to die for him to have his time in the sun. And he was one of the reasons that World War I started. So we definitely need to put up World War I on Kaiser Wilhelm. Now let's think about the name Kaiser real quick. Kaiser goes back to Tsar, like Caesar. So we have Tsar in Russia, and we've got Kaiser in Germany, and we've got Caesar, that was 1,000 years ago in Italy. So it all kind of just means king or ruler. All right, so Kaiser Wilhelm, we need to remember that he was very nationalistic. He liked to make agreements with people, like he made an agreement with Austria saying that we'll protect you no matter what because we're so big and strong. And that just went really, really bad in World War I. So we need to remember that he was forming these alliances, that he was trying to, most of all, make Germany's place in the sun. So yeah, didn't go particularly well for him. So now, our next card is Tsar Nicholas II. And Tsar Nicholas II, so when we flip our card back, so it's week number 2, card number 3, and we're going to flip it over really quickly and put Tsar Nicholas II in the circle. You can pause if you need to. And then we need to say he too is the grandson of Queen Victoria. So now let's go back to Kaiser Wilhelm. You can pause at any time. Kaiser Wilhelm, and put Tsar Nicholas because they were cousins. And so on the Tsar Nicholas card, let's put Kaiser Wilhelm because they were, oh, you got it, they were cousins. They were cousins, and they were both grandsons of Queen Victoria. And Tsar Nicholas was the one who finished the Trans-Siberian Railroad from last week, so we can put TSR on that on one of the circles. So definitely TSR, or Trans-Siberian Railroad. And he had fought the Japanese, watched the railroad blow up several times. And he was married to a woman named Alexandria. And they wanted to have boys because you needed boys to run these countries. They weren't really that fond of girls, even though Queen Victoria, his grandma, was a fantastic queen. And they had a whole slew of girls. And so when she finally had a boy, he had hemophilia. And hemophilia is a disease where if you cut yourself, a bad cut, but if you cut yourself or you bruise yourself very badly, you can bleed to death. And it is something that you only get by inheriting it from your mother. And so he inherited their son, Alexei, inherited it from his mom. And it was just so heartbreaking to Nicholas because he really wanted a big, buffy, strong boy to run the Russian Empire, which was humongous. It was like really big. And so what happened was Alexandria, the wife, said, oh, this is really bad. And so she consulted a man who said he was like a spiritual guy. His name was Rasputin. And she started really listening to him. And over time, he convinced Nicholas and Alexandria that he was hearing from God and that they needed to follow him. And as time went on, they really didn't listen to their advisors anymore. They started listening to Rasputin, and Rasputin was doing many bad things. We definitely need Rasputin, and maybe put like a face or something like that to talk about Rasputin in there, because Rasputin was one of the reasons that the Tsar, or Nicholas, was the last Tsar, because he and his whole family were taken to Siberia, and they were eventually no longer going to be king and queen, or their whole line wasn't going to be king or queen anymore. So Nicholas was the last Tsar of Russia, and we need to just remember Alexandra, his wife, and his daughters, and then Alexa, his son, who had hemophilia. And then we also need to remember that Rasputin played a huge part, because they were listening to something that was false, and they were not listening to God. And that he also lived quite lavishly. So we're going to throw up a picture of his castles. He lived quite lavishly. So if we remember from the French Revolution, a couple from last year, remember that the monarchs were living so lavishly and the people had very little. It was kind of the same again with Tsar Nicholas. So we need to remember that for when we see people in power living really lavishly and not like the people they're in power over, that it doesn't really go well in the future. So that is Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, and you have finished all 3 timeline cards, and I am so proud of you. Good job. I'll see you next week.